Hear ye, here comes the judge. It is the Yogi Judge, Judge Dawson, and I am back with another podcast for you, all aimed at taking your mindset higher, giving you something to think about, and maybe, just maybe, inspiring you to your greatest potential. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I try to do with this podcast. I am not here to waste your time. I am not here to get you to spend any money. I'm not here to do anything but empower you to live your best life, because that's how we're all going to leave legacies that will last long beyond our time here. So I appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast that I've done so far. And I will continue to try to bring you these Magic Mondays, days where I drop my podcast so that you can get something to carry you through the week, and maybe even share the information with someone close to you, a family member, a friend. And if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Judge William Dawson. I am the administrative and presiding judge of the East Cleveland Municipal Court in beautiful Ohio. It's a suburb from the city of Cleveland, but believe it or not, that word suburb doesn't really apply to East Cleveland, because we are in the midst of some of the greatest poverty that exists in the United States, some of the highest levels of crime, and just a depressed economy. But that's the city that I'm from. That's the city where I was born and raised. So I am now honored to serve on the bench as the judge in that city. And my mission, ladies and gentlemen, every single day that I hit the bench is to provide some type of empowerment and inspiration. That is the only reason I ran for judge. And if you've been in my court, you know that to be true. See, people can talk about being a leader, and people can talk about how they want to help people change and be the best they can be, but the proof is in the pudding. And I tell you, if you come into my court, you will witness change in action. Now, every day isn't a rosy day, and I don't have knockout days every single day, but the most of my days are spent with some type of empowerment. And I do that. And I also do this podcast where I'm hoping to reach some people. And if you don't listen to the podcast, then maybe you subscribe to the email list. It's called A Dose of Positivity. You can subscribe to it on my website, www.judgedawson.com. If you don't listen to the podcast and you don't get the email, maybe you'll buy one of the books that I've published, self-published, because my goal is to leave a legacy of empowerment. Now, today's topic, I'm going to be short because my goal is to hit it hard and then let you go. Maybe get something for you to think about, pass it on, share the podcast. I'm going to be doing a series on leadership. And really quickly, the reason I'm doing that series is because I was convinced to create a workbook from the book that I wrote called The Cycle Breaker. Now, I'm not talking about a workbook that deals with just being a cycle breaker and the cycle breaker programs and things like that I work and run out of my court. I wrote a book called The Cycle Breaker that has an amazing story of 5 young men who made mistakes in their lives, but instead of going to jail, they were whisked off to a cycle breaker camp where they were able to turn their lives around. That's an excellent book. So if you don't have it, or if you haven't heard of it, go to my website so you can check it out. But the point of this podcast is that now I am doing a workbook so that I can take that material and spread it through actual teaching, maybe in colleges or high schools or even to leaders. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the next few podcasts. I'm going to be talking from the excerpts from my workbook that is coming out. So today's topic is about leadership. Now, to quote the book, here's a quote from the book, The Cycle Breaker. Quote, "I know that you have leadership qualities. You men have to learn to be leaders and learn how to take charge of your destiny. It doesn't matter if you don't have that fancy title behind your name or a bunch of degrees. You have to be a leader in your life and a leader to your family. Instead of waiting for someone to do it first, instead of following the crowd, step out and be a leader." Those were the words that were quoted to the young men as they entered Cycle Breaker Camp. So my podcast today, what does it mean to be a leader? And here we go, short and sweet. Sometimes you wake up inspired, ready to take on the world. Other times you wake up depressed and not in the mood to do anything. But now I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to wake up the leader that's in you. And I'm going to give you 4 principles and I'm gone. The first one, it's important to understand that leadership is not an exclusive club. You don't have to be born with it. You don't have to be rich to be a leader. You don't have to go to a certain school to be a leader. You don't have to speak in a certain dialect to be a leader, but instead, the leader is in all of us. We all have the capacity to be leaders if we just tap into what was born in us, what was bred in us, what was placed in us at our birth. It's that leadership capacity. Number 2, every one of us, every human has the instinct and capacity for leadership. But you know what happens? Most people don't even have the courage or the willpower to cultivate it. Now, it takes courage to be a leader because most times when you step out to be a leader, you're going against the grain of what's happening in your regular day life. You're going against the grain, what's happening in your neighborhood, in your family. You're going to step out and be different. And that takes courage. And a lot of people don't have that courage, or a lot of people aren't willing to tap into that courage. And then on top of that, you have to have the will to even want to do it. And that's what I said in the very beginning. Sometimes you wake up ready to take on the world. Other times you just don't feel like it. But I tell you, it is worth it. It's worth every moment of you being the absolute best that you can be. Number 3, man was created to lead. But somewhere along the line, we lost that. We were created to lead. Look at this world we live in. We are humans. As humans, we are the supreme beings. We rule the earth, right? We create. We dominate. But for some reason or somewhere along the line, we lost that. And I can tell you why. We lost it because inherent in people, we have an evil spirit. Let's keep it real. You know, there's just good and there's evil. There's no doubt about it. You can just read any newspaper, any news article, and you'll see the difference with good and evil. It's right there in your face. And it's the evil that took over and caused a lot of people just to lose their will to even be a leader. I mean, think about it. When you get beat down in a relationship, you don't want to lead in that relationship. When you get beat down by the teachers at school telling you that you're not worth anything, that you're not smart, you don't want to give it your all. When you get beat down as a race or as a group of people or as a gender, you don't want to participate with mainstream anymore. Matter of fact, you just want to shrink into your own hole and just say, forget it and forget everybody. And that's what I mean by losing the will to even try. But I submit to you, in order to be the absolute best that you can be, in order to leave the legacy that you should leave, you have to tap into that leadership skill. And then number 4, all of us possess the potential to lead, but most of us have lost the passion to lead. Losing the passion to lead can be based on all those things I just mentioned. The fact that we get beat down, the fact that we, have tragedies in our lives, the fact that we have bills that are mounting, the fact that we have people that are opposing us and our ideas and our dreams and our desires. After a while, you may lose the passion to even dream, let alone be a leader. But ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, it is worth the dream. It is worth the effort. It is worth being a leader. So when you go back to the top of the podcast and we talk about how sometimes you feel like getting out of bed, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're ready to take on the world and sometimes you feel like you can't. It's because we are not realizing and living in the potential of being the leaders that we can be. So I suggest to you that you take some time this week while you're listening to this podcast and sharing it with the people that you love, that we rediscover our capacity and what it means to be a leader. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is my time. It is the Yogi Judge, Judge Dawson. And if you want more information or want to subscribe to my podcast, visit my website. It's www.judgedawson.com. And until we meet again, as I always do, I want to tell you and say to you, namaste.